y'all, it's Jonathan with Pinnacle Outdoor Traditions. We are going to go through the process that I go through personally for mounting and bore sighting a rifle. Got the new 450 Bushmaster. If you haven't already seen that video, go back and check it out. It'll be linked here at the bottom of this video, and I think I'm going to try and link it at the end of it as well. But this is a Ruger American Gen 2 Predator rifle in 450 Bushmaster. Really nice feeling rifle. Have not had a chance to shoot it because got the scope and everything still sitting right here. So we're going to go through what I do, the steps and processes here. I've picked out some CV Life scope mounts, scope rings. These are high rings. I have a Vortex 3 to 9 by 50, so it's a 50 millimeter objective lens, so I need the higher rings in order to match that bigger objective lens there. But we're going to set this all up, bore sighted. I've got a couple of different bore sighting tools that I use for that, and just kind of go through the process that at least I like to do in order to get this done. Hopefully it'll help you guys out. Maybe it won't. I don't know. I've been doing it this way for years. It's just how I done it. It's how I learned it. It's how I do it. A lot of it's by feel. First off, we want to get the rings installed. Now, one of the reasons why I went with CV Life is that they use a Torx head screw versus an Allen screw for all their screws on their scope mounts, the side mounting screws as well as the top plate screw. They also, nice solid base right there on the inside, and they have these little bars in this channel that is specifically made to match the cutouts of a Picatinny rail. They also have a set for the Weaver style as well, so depending on which rail you use, they have a set up for it. I like these because that's going to take up a lot of that internal room on that Picatinny, so when you go to slide it on, you don't have nowhere near as much of that backwards, forward sort of wiggle room that the normal screw going through does. Oh, I'm forgetting that. Loctite! Yes! Blue Loctite. I do like using blue Loctite, especially on the mounting plate. I've had problems in the past where those things come loose. If you look at the video, last year, the 2023 season where I was deer hunting, where I was sitting in the woods and my scope was moving everywhere on my muzzleloader, and that was my problem, is that the mounting plate there, the side plate on the screws had come loose. The screws worked themselves out, and so it was loose and moving, and that gives me an inaccurate scope. Just a dabble do you when it comes to blue Loctite. It's nothing major. Right there at the very tip of that screw, just put a little drop like that. Blue Loctite doesn't set as hard or as quickly as red does, which is why I like using this, because if I'm ever in a situation where I need to take these off, I can. Red Loctite, especially with screws like this, the thread lock, it's pretty much permanent. You got to heat that thing up in order to get it to work. Now you can use a torque wrench for this part. I usually just torque it down to the point that I know how it feels, and I know it's solid and it's tight. Usually it's the front set of scope rings that I have a hard time getting in place. I'm also getting a little bit ahead of myself because I'm trying to record and do this in a bit of a rush, so I apologize. Normally, what you want to do is figure out where your rings are going to go first, set it up, and then pull all the screws out and do the Loctite on it. That way, you know for sure your scope is going to fit and it's going to sit exactly where you want it to. I really like these Torx head screws. That is one main reason why I went with this set of rings. So now we got the rings bases on. We want to go ahead and put the scope on, just get an idea. So at this stage, all I'm checking for is the eye relief, the distance between your eyeball and the, not the objective, but the optical lens, the front part of the scope where you're looking through. Make sure that you're getting a full field of view. You don't have that dark ring that's circling in and closing your field of view, and you want to make sure that you pull it forward or back in order to get that perfect full field of vision, get the most out of your scope. I like where the scope's at, but I don't like the ring sitting up against the magnification ring. So I'm gonna pull it back just one. The idea is that you want your scope rings about center of that part of the housing and somewhere center of this part of the housing. You don't want it up against here, and you don't want it up against that shoulder there. So I'm moving the rings forward just a bit to give me that room. Now we know where our rings are at. You can see about middle of that housing, little forward of this housing, not dead center. We could maybe move that forward a little bit more if we wanted to. And actually, I think I will. So I'm not sitting right up against that shoulder any longer. And you know, I've got about dead center of that housing there. I can adjust and move a little bit more here and there to kind of fine tune that. But I think we're good with where the bases are. So we're gonna go ahead and finish Loctiting those down. And then we'll finish mounting the scope. Well, that's a problem. This video has just turned into a poor review of the CB Life scope ring bases. That thing was torqued all the way down, and you can see and hear it's still very loose. Let me try turning it around. Okay, so what I just found out, and I'll need to contact the manufacturer on Amazon and find out for sure. But the only way this thing gets tight is if I flip the plate over, which looks like it's not actually cut out for. That it shouldn't be that way. So we won't be taking that to the range until we contact the manufacturer. So we found a little problem with the CB Life rings. Not sure if that's a problem or not. I mean, they're pretty rock solid. They'd probably be all right, but definitely not going to shoot this until I know for sure. Back to the rest of the scope mounting process. First thing I like to do is put the scope on, just kind of get it in the general area. And you'll feel there's a gap right here between the two pieces of the scope ring on either side. And I just kind of stick the finger fat is the best way I can describe it. But I put the meat of my finger between the two, just so I can feel that they are level. The reason I do that, and the reason you want to make sure that the scope is going down level, or the scope rings are going down level, is as you're tightening it down, you're going to actually be working in a clockwise fashion, and that way you're kind of slowly working it down, and it comes down evenly. If you tighten one end down and leave the other one a little bit looser, and there's a big gap on one side while the other side's pressed up against each other, what it's doing is it's torquing that scope inside the mounts, which is a big no-no. It's going to actually screw up your shot, screw up the way the rings or the crosshairs are working and everything. So all I do is just kind of get the threads in there and get it to where I can feel the head of the screw hit that little wall, and I can tell with, just by feel that the top part of the scope ring is going down level, that both sides have the same amount of gap and have the same amount of areas to be able to be torqued down. If you don't trust your fingers, you don't trust that way of doing things, the other way you can do it is get some feeler gauges and put in there and just kind of measure how much space is between the two. Some better scope rings, you don't have any, so it just kind of depends on the manufacturer and the rings. They seem to be, actually that part of it seems to be going on pretty good. They're sitting pretty solid, and they don't feel like there's a whole lot of wiggle room in there one way or the other. But depending on how cheap you go with your scope rings, there could be some play. They may not meet together correctly, and when you go to torque it down, you need to make sure that you're not torquing the scope itself inside the scope rings. I've been doing this, Lord, probably 20 years at this stage. So I trust, that I know how to feel it, I know what I'm looking for, and I just kind of trust that and I've got that part figured out. Again, it's up to you. Some people are very particular. Some people are engineers. They got to have things down to the thousandths of an inch. That's what feeler gauges are made for, so go ahead and go for it. Me personally, this is what I do. But you can see the scope is still free moving inside the scope rings. And now what I want to do is go ahead and check my eye relief again. Now that I've got it actually on the rings, and I want to move it front, back, however I need to in order to make sure that when I look in that scope that I'm seeing the full field of vision. Alright. As you see, during that part, I pulled the gun out of the vise. When you're doing this, you can sit on the vise and you can look through the scope and say, yep, that looks good to me. But what really counts is how you can see through the scope as you shoulder the gun. So practicing pulling it up, shouldering, looking through it, you want to be able to have that thing hit your face, hit that cheek weld, and your eye be directly in line, seeing every bit that you can through that scope in an instant. So you got to be able to shoulder and look, and it just be second nature. Otherwise, the time that it takes to kind of look and find it through the scope and find your target, with deer especially, they can be gone. They move. They don't normally stand still very long. So you want to make sure that you've got that set up precisely for you. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do, we've got it set up pretty good. And then I'm going to give about a quarter of a turn on two of the screws, keeping my fingers on that side just so I can feel and make sure it's still going down good. I want tension on there. I want it to be steady, but I'm not torquing everything down yet because I'm not done. Next thing that I like to do, and this depends on whether you have these tools or not, but I have two different setups for bore sighting. One is a laser setup, which is usually used more so for the like the AR style rifle, where the scope and the barrel are pretty far apart. It's usually, better off for some, variation of that. But it also comes with a little leveling kit. So what it does is it sends a beam of light that would normally be just a pinpoint laser through this little piece, and it shoots a straight line across with a bubble level on top, so that you can level out your scope, because it may be slightly canted inside the vise. Your eyeball could be off. I mean, mine's not perfect. I can see, yeah, something don't look right, or no, that's dead on the money. But at the end of the day, it's a kind of a guessing game. It's a feel thing. It's a matter of intuition, and as such, I'd rather triple check my work. All right, so ran into another snafu. Batteries are dead in my laser bore sight, which means that I can't shoot a nice straight line across the wall until I get new batteries, and they're little watch batteries that I don't have. So what I'm going to do is improvise. Improvisation is the key to and mother of all inventions. Now guys, there are other tools that are made just for this. There's bubble levels that go onto barrels and scope housings so that you can match the level on both items. I don't have those. Normally this works and works just fine, so never felt the need to go invest another $30 into that. This still has a bubble on the end, which means that it's going to tell me as I turn the gun itself whether or not it stays level. I went ahead and put a level on the safety mechanism on the back of the receiver. It's the flattest part that I could find on the gun itself. And what I'm doing is I'm making sure that the gun is not canted left or right inside the vise, that it is being held true and straight. So I put a bubble on the front, a bubble on the back, everything's leveled out, so we're good, which means now I put it on top of the scope. So, scope's not level. I kind of saw that looking through it. So what I'm going to do is I put this square on top of the scope, and I'm going to turn the scope itself. I'm going to loosen these screws up just a little bit so I have enough room and enough slack to be able to turn it while still inside the scope rings. So what I've done, I adjusted the rifle more so that it's level. Make sure that's level too. This is why I don't like doing it this way. It takes a lot more work. All right, so according to my levels, everything should be leveled out and squared. According to my eye, it looks pretty good. Let's double check it. I think we're good. Now comes the fun part. So I'm keeping the bubble on top of the scope. And what I'm going to do is, again, quarter turn only. I hit the corners kind of diagonally, going across, and keeping the same tension on it, you know, as I'm torquing it down. So these things are going down pretty darn good. Quarter turns are all I'm trying to accomplish. At this stage, I mean, I've already got it down pretty much to that wall. And this is the torquing process, just to make sure that those threads are grabbing really well. And they are. So on that side of things, with CV Life, I would say, hey, y'all are doing really good. And that plate being upside down might just be something where when they threw it together, they did it backwards, and I figured it out. It might be made so that you can do that, or it might be one of those things where they're going to want it back. After all this work, I certainly hope they don't, but I don't want to mess with inferior equipment that's broken too. When it comes to scope rings, when it's all the way down and it's tight and it ain't going nowhere, you're going to feel it. You're going to know it's torqued down. Most manufacturers will give you a torque spec if you have a type of a torque wrench. I think I got everything down there pretty good. So again, it's a personal opinion. You know, you definitely can't go wrong by torquing it to spec. You know, generally, I say follow the instructions. They know what they're talking about. Manufacturers do that for a reason. But in this particular case, this is just a force of habit. We got it torqued down good. Looks real nice. So, I mean, that's pretty much what I do. That's it. That's the mounting process of it. Last thing we're going to do is bore sight it. For this type of a rifle, I have a Wheeler product that I really like. Pretty sure it's a Wheeler. I might be wrong. Oh, no, BSA, I'm sorry. So this is a BSA bore sighting kit. So you have a hole right here that allows you to put a caliber sized steel rod in it. So it's based off the caliber of the gun, whether it's a 30, 40, 45, what have you. It allows you to put that in there. And then inside is a grid with crosshairs on it. And this will actually sit and be level with a bolt action rifle like this, and allow you to adjust the up and down and left and right so that the center crosshairs meet the crosshair and shows you how far off you are. The bore sight, the laser bore sighter, it's great for showing you your levels. It's good for getting you on paper with like an AR because of the height difference between the scope and the barrel. But these are a lot closer together. It's a bolt action rifle. Everything's, you know, pretty close to center line, and there's a lot of play and give in that. So it's not going to be as accurate. I've found that this works a lot better. So the way these things work, there's a little flat spot, and this set screw goes right up against that flat spot. It's got a little tension piece right there that goes inside the barrel of the gun and will hold it in place. Well, what do you know, I got it on pretty good first try. Woohoo! Sometimes when you put it in, if you put it in sideways or crooked, you'll look through the scope, you'll see the grid and go, holy cow, I'm like cockeyed. So you got to adjust this. But I actually got it right on the first try. Pretty much that's it. We're set, we're bore sighted. That means I'm going to be good enough to get on the paper at 25 yards, usually fairly close to the target, but we don't know for sure until we shoot it and see how well my abilities are. And anytime you bore sight a rifle, guys, anytime you mount a new scope and bore sight it, I've had people in the past at stores I've worked at thinking that that means the gun's sighted in. No, it is not. First off, you've not put a single round through it, so you don't know how that round flies down that barrel, how the pressure of the powder works, how the speed of the bullet is, or any of that. So there is no way you can sight a gun in without shooting it. It is impossible. This is a close enough, and what this does is allows you to be able to shoot at like 25 or 50 yards and hit a decent sized target, see where it's hitting, and adjust versus starting at like 5 or 10 yards, because the further out you go, the wider your group is until you start dialing it in. So what you got to do is still go out, put it on a big piece of paper, see where your mistakes are, see how far you off here or there, left, right, up, down, what have you, and dial it in from there. Still takes work, but that's the good thing about a gun. You know, while it takes work doing it, it's fun too, because I don't know about you, I love shooting my guns. So for me, sighting a gun in, man, that's a fun range day. Speaking of which, that will be the next video in this series. We'll see how this gun works on the range, how well it sights in, how good of a job I done. I'll contact CV Life about the scope rings and let y'all know on that video what I find out. But otherwise, she's set and ready to go and shoot. Now I just need ammunition. So, guys, Jonathan with Pinnacle Outdoor Traditions. I'll see y'all on the next video. Get outdoor and make some traditions of your own. So we're going for the gun first. Yeah, boy! Woo! That rocked in. Tire, gun, the stand, and everything. About knocked it down. And that's what I love about this round. It has got so much force when it hits.